Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're plunging into something that can feel pretty complicated at first glance. Drone regulations in the European Union.
Yeah, it definitely seems like a lot.
If you've thought about getting a drone up in the air, maybe for amazing photos or, practical stuff, you might have felt a bit lost on where to start.
That feeling, completely understandable. There's just a significant amount of detail. But, well, that's exactly why we're here today.
Right.
We've basically gone through the official EASA documents, that's the European Union Aviation Safety Agency, and the relevant bits of EU law. Our goal is to pull out the really crucial info you need.
Think of it as a shortcut, maybe. A streamlined guide to the essentials without getting totally bogged down.
Exactly. We want to give you a clear understanding.
Yeah, we're going to break down how the EU sorts drone flights by risk, dive into registration, pilot training, what your responsibilities are, the whole thing.
We're using EASA's FAQs on the open, specific, and certified categories, plus info on registration, training, model aircraft, even rules for non-EU operators.
And we'll touch on some of the actual legal texts from EU RLEX that form the basis for all this, so ready to make sense of it.
Absolutely. Let's kick off with the basics. How the EU categorizes drone operations. Understanding this framework is, well, key to everything else.
Okay, so these three buckets, open, specific, certified, it sounds like the main difference is how much risk is involved.
Precisely. The EU regs use what they call a risk-based approach. You see this elsewhere in aviation, too.
Right.
It means the rules are sort of proportional to the potential danger. It's not one size fits all. The oversight, the requirements, they scale with the risk.
Makes sense. And that applies whether you're flying for fun or for work.
Yes, leisure or commercial, the risk approach applies.
So if I'm planning a flight, how do I actually figure out which category it fits into?
Generally speaking, if your plan doesn't meet all the specific requirements for the open category, then it's probably going to be specific or, for the really high-risk stuff, certified.
The open category has more built-in limits, then, to keep the risk low.
Exactly. Lots of safeguards baked in.
Okay, let's really dig into this open category. I'm guessing that's where most hobby flights and maybe some basic commercial stuff like aerial photos will land. I notice it's split into subcategories, too.
Yes, that's right. A1, A2, and A3 within the open category. A simple way to think about them is how close you might be flying to people.
Yeah, okay.
A1 generally lets you fly over people, but, and this is crucial, not over big crowds, assemblies of people. A2 means you can fly closer to people than A3 allows.
And A3.
A3 means you need to stay well away from people in areas where you wouldn't expect uninvolved individuals to be hanging around.
Got it. So it's location, but also the drone itself matters, right? These new class identification labels I've seen mentioned, C0, C1.
Exactly. Those are really important now. Since January 1st, 2024, new drones put on the market must have a class label from C0 up to C6.
And these labels basically dictate the rules within those A1, A2, A3 subcategories.
They do. They're fundamental for operating in the open category. They relate mostly to weight and capability.
Right. So what if I have an older drone? Bought before Jan 1st, 2024. No fancy label. Can I still fly it in the open category?
You can, yes. There are transitional provisions running until January 1st, 2026 for these legacy drones without labels.
Yeah.
If it weighs less than 250 grams, you can operate in subcategory A1. That means you can fly over uninvolved people, though, it's always best practice to avoid it if you can.
Okay, under 250 gram A1. What about heavier, older drones?
If your unlabeled drone is between 250 grams and up to 25 kilograms, you're restricted to subcategory A3.
Ah, A3. So that means staying far away from people.
Correct. Avoid flying over uninvolved people entirely and keep at least 150 meters horizontal distance from residential, commercial, industrial, or recreational areas.
Okay, so definitely more limits on those older drones. What about the new ones with the labels? How do the rules vary for, say, a C0 or a C1 drone?
Good question. A C0 drone that's the lightest, under 250 gram, also operates in A1. Same main rules. Don't fly over assemblies of people. Stick to the 120-meter height limit.
Okay. And C1, they're a bit heavier, under 900 grams.
C1 drones, also in A1, have a slightly different rule for flying over people. You shouldn't fly over uninvolved people if you can reasonably avoid it. If you do, keep the time you're over them absolutely minimal.
Minimize duration.
Got it.
What about C2? Under 4 kilograms.
C2 drones operate in subcategory A1. Here, you're strictly forbidden from flying directly over uninvolved people. You need to maintain at least 30 meters horizontal distance.
30 years.
But there's a slight exception. That can drop to just 5 meters if the drone has a specific low-speed mode activated and you've passed the more advanced A2 pilot competency test.
Ah, okay. So extra training needed for that closer distance.
Yeah.
And C3 and C4, up to 25 kilograms.
Both C3 and C4 drones are for subcategory A3. So back to that 150-meter horizontal buffer zone from uninvolved people and built-up areas.
That's quite a few numbers. What about the general height limit? You mentioned 120 meters. Does that apply across the board in the open category?
Generally, yes, 120 meters above the ground where you are. There is one specific exception, though. If you need to fly over an obstacle, say a building or a mast, that's taller than 120 meters.
Right.
You can fly up to 15 meters above the height of that obstacle, but only if the owner of the obstacle gives you explicit permission. And you have to stay within 50 meters horizontally of it.
Okay, that makes sense for inspections and things.
Yeah.
Now, people on the ground. You mentioned uninvolved persons and assemblies of people. This sounds like a really critical distinction.
It is. Absolutely critical. An uninvolved person is basically anyone not directly participating in the flight, someone who isn't aware of the safety steps you're taking.
Okay.
An assembly of people is different. It's a crowd, a gathering where people can't easily move away if something goes wrong. Think concerts, sports events, busy markets, places where people are packed together.
And the rules are very different for flying over these two.
Very different. In the open category, flying directly over an assembly of people, absolutely forbidden, no exception.
Ever. Got it.
For uninvolved individuals, the general rule is don't fly over them. But, as we said, there are those limited exceptions for the really light C0 and sub-250-gram legacy drones.
Where you avoid it if possible.
Right. And for C1 drones, where any overflight must be brief.
And just putting up a sign saying drone flying doesn't suddenly make everyone involved.
No, absolutely not. You generally need specific individual consent for someone to be considered truly involved and aware of the risks.
That's a very important point. Okay, so assuming you're following all these location and drone rules, what are your responsibilities as the pilot actually flying the thing in the open category?
The remote pilot has quite a few key responsibilities before, during, and after the flight.
Okay, like what before takeoff?
Before you even launch, you need to make sure you have the right training and certificates, check for any restricted airspaces, geographical zones in your flight area, assess the area for obstacles people. Is the drone itself safe to fly? Is the controller working? Is the weight within limits for your chosen subcategories?
A proper pre-flight check. And once you're airborne?
During the flight, well, first off, don't fly if you're impaired in any way. Alcohol, drugs, illness, fatigue. You must keep the drone in your direct visual line of sight, VLOS.
What about FPV goggles, first-person view?
Allowed, but only if you have a UA observer standing right next to you. And that observer's job is to keep eyes directly on the drone without aid and be able to warn you instantly of any danger.
Okay, so you need a spotter.
Yes. And you always have to give way to manned aircraft. Always. Comply with airspace rules, follow the manufacturer's instructions, and crucially, never fly near or interfere with emergency response efforts.
Makes total sense. Now, the person flying, what training or qualifications do you actually need for the open category?
It's tiered. Depends on the subcategory and the drone class. For A1 and A3, you generally need to do an online training course. Your National Aviation Authority provides this or approves providers and pass an online theory test.
Okay, straightforward enough.
For A2, which lets you fly closer to people with those C2 drones, it's a bit more involved. Same online training and initial theory tests, but also practical self-training in realistic conditions. And then you have to pass another, more detailed theory exam, often proctored.
Right, A2s is a step up. How long are these certificates valid?
Once you pass, you get a remote pilot competency certificate. It's valid for 5 years, and importantly, it's recognized across all EASA member states.
Okay, and is there a minimum age?
Generally, it's 16 to register as a pilot. But there's no minimum age if you're flying a drone under 250 grams, either privately built or a C0 class one, as long as it's not classified as a toy.
Got it. So you've done the training, you know the rules.
Yeah.
What about registering as a drone operator? When is that actually required?